Hello, and welcome to a surprise episode of The List Show, my other show I do. My name is Dylan Lang. I do a show called Dylan Knows here on YouTube every Saturday night, Sunday afternoon, pending. I just did my 600th episode of that. I've been doing it for close to 11 to 12 years. My List Show is something new that I created last year, and I'm on volume 10 right now. I just had a dentist appointment, so if my voice sounds a little weird, it's because this side of my face is completely numb. Because I had a cavity need to get done, but I had to do it because today, April 2nd, 2025, the great actor Val Kilmer passed away due to complications from pneumonia and cancer, per his family. Val Kilmer is one of the most hugely popular and really good actors from the 80s and 90s. And he has 14 performances and 2 honorable mentions, which I'm going to mention here as well, that I like as well. And we'll talk about those a little bit too. I'll talk a little bit more about his passing on my next show, probably Saturday night. But for now, I just wanted to get this done because I had this. It was weird. I had this written weeks ago, months ago, actually. It wasn't because he was going to die. It was just I needed to find ideas for my list show, and I just happened to stumble upon, let's do some actors, and Val Kilmer popped into my head, and I looked up his stuff and remembered stuff he had, and I haven't seen all of his movies, but these 14 I have seen, and the honorable mentions I have too, so that's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that I haven't seen of his, but I figure it's a good selection of everything. I got to make sure that the numbers look about right. Yeah, I guess they look okay. Yeah, they might be a little off here in a few of them, but generally it's pretty decent. So without further ado, these are the top 14 Val Kilmer performances with 2 honorable mentions. He died at the age of 65 today through pneumonia and cancer, as I said earlier. It's kind of a sad day. Lots of really good, warm remembrances and stuff like that for him on the social medias. So here we go. Honorable mentions. The reason why I have these as honorable mentions is because these 2 roles are basically nothing more than really like cameos, but they're still worthy of them. First one is the Top Gun Maverick cameo he did. Probably one of the best scenes in the whole movie. Him and Tom Cruise going at it one last time, and then his character passing away at the end. But it's a very well done scene and a very good scene between Tom and Val, both of whom in real life have much respect for each other. So that's why I had that as one of my cameos. It's as I said, nothing more than a cameo, but it was needed for the sequel, and the fact that at that time Val Kilmer was suffering from what eventually helped pneumonia and the cancer. The cancer was what really got him, and why he couldn't really do much talking in Top Gun Maverick. But it is a great sequence, and just goes to show how good he actually is, and even has a little bit of a ribbing joke there at the end, which is the best. And the other one, again, is another cameo. Quentin Tarantino originally wanted to direct this after Reservoir Dogs, but he still hadn't gotten the cred yet that he deserved. So he wrote the screenplay, and Tony Scott, who ended up, directing Val Kilmer in Top Gun, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And I think Deja Vu also is another one that he did with Val Kilmer. Tony Scott ended up directing it, and it's great because Val Kilmer's one of his plus sides, as he's always been kind of musical. Again, we'll talk about The Doors in a little bit, Prince of Egypt in a little bit as well. So he's got some singing stuff, and then Top Secret as well. So a lot of the roles where he's had to sing, he actually did the singing himself. There was nobody dubbing him, nobody like that. He did all the singing for that, and he worked his butt off. And we'll talk about Top Secret again, as I said, in a little bit. But True Romance has Val Kilmer in a cameo role as Elvis Presley. Now, most people probably don't know that it's Val Kilmer unless you hear it from me or if you looked it up. But Christian Slater's character is this like sort of pop culture sort of guy, and his hero is Elvis Presley. And whenever he needs to talk stuff out, he imagines Elvis Presley talking to him. And in this case, Elvis Presley is played by Val Kilmer, who does a very good Elvis Presley impersonation in True Romance. A very good underrated film, very Tarantino-esque, and he really wanted it to be his. He had planned also to do it how, if he was going to direct True Romance, he was going to do it how he ended up doing Pulp Fiction. He was going to do it all out of order. He actually, if you haven't seen the movie, there's a sequence where Dennis Hopper, who plays Christian Slater's father, is getting tortured and interrogated by Christopher Walken's gangster. And it's a really intense scene. It's a really good scene between two acting giants. And Quentin wanted to have that as the first scene in the movie and then figure out how it all worked out. But Val Kilmer's Elvis, again, the movie is filled with cameos. Brad Pitt's in it. Gary Oldman's in it. Again, all kind of like cameo-ish roles. Samuel L. Jackson's in it. Again, very small cameo roles. But Val Kilmer's Elvis is still a very well done. It was a small sequence in the film, but Val Kilmer nailed Elvis as he nails everything else he does. So congratulations on that. So now we got our top 14 right now. Again, this is my list show, so you may not agree with this list, and it's a fluid list. So if I did this a list again next year, the numbers might have switched around because I might have seen some of those movies I haven't seen of his, or I might have rewatched one and changed my mind about it. But this is my list as of last year. I don't think there's really anything to really change up about it too much. I think I'm going to keep it the way it is. Number 14, we have Batman Forever. After Warner Brothers didn't want Tim Burton to come back, or they wanted to come back, but he didn't. He decided he didn't want to, or whatever. And Michael Keaton wasn't going to come back after that. They decided to hire Joel Schumacher and get a whole new screenplay written for it, and needed to cast a new Batman. And Val Kilmer was cast as Bruce Wayne Batman in this movie. And Batman Forever is not terrible. And it's great. It's not great. What really makes it terrible is a few things. Jim Carrey's Riddler is Joker light, is not the way the Riddler should be done. If you see my show, you know I have a Riddler, a love for the Riddler, and he has never been done properly on screen, not even by the Batman. They turned him into a cold-blooded killer. The Riddler is not. He believes he is the smartest man in the room. He's smarter than everybody, and that's why he leaves the clues to himself. Frank Gorshin did a pretty good job as Riddler, but still not quite where I wanted it to be for myself personally. But Jim Carrey's Riddler was just way over the edge and just way over the top, and did not like it. Tommy Lee Jones's Two-Face was okay. He had the look. I think he might have been a little bit too old for the role. Aaron Eckhart did a better job of it in The Dark Knight, and actually felt a little more like the Two-Face. But so they did that. And then Chris O'Donnell as Robin. He was too old to be Robin, but he would have been a decent Nightwing if they would have just made him Nightwing. I kind of like that. They didn't go as goofy as Batman and Robin did, but there are some goofy sequences in it. But all in all, none of it's really, it's not Val Kilmer's fault. And Nicole Kidman's a great, hot, fantastic female co-star and love interest for Bruce Wayne. And I think Val Kilmer did a mostly brilliant job as Batman and Bruce Wayne. He's a bit too broody for my taste. I would like to give him a little bit more of a personality, a little bit. He just seemed, but no, Val Kilmer played it the way most people like to see him, as this brooding sort of guy, and kept it that way. And he had a few little quips here and there, but not, it's almost there is what I'm saying. And I probably need to rewatch it again. I just can't get over Jim Carrey's Riddler. It's just so terrible to me. But Val Kilmer was a decent Batman, and unfortunately, it was during that time where he was also a difficult actor. In the mid '90s, he was not the best actor that people like to work with all that much, and he sort of showed that a little bit on there. But it's not Val's fault that Batman Forever is as I said, it's not terrible, but it's not great. Joel Schumacher did okay, but he did a little too much with it, and tried to get a little too far away from Tim Burton's Batman series. But I think Val Kilmer, in the end, is a decent Batman, or was a decent Batman. And I think there's a director's cut or something that people say is a whole lot better. Haven't seen it, haven't heard it, hasn't been released, whatever. So that might be one I need to check out again, but still, it's just the Jim Carrey Riddler is just way over the top. The scheme is kind of stupid. But I think Val Kilmer and Val Kilmer's a little bit too broody for me. But in the end, I think he was a very good Batman, Bruce Wayne, and a good follow up after Michael Keaton left the role. I have issues with George Clooney because he tried to do too much. I think he's too famous when he did it, and it doesn't seem right to me. But he wasn't. Maybe he was a little too terrible. He was probably the worst of them. Affleck's Batman wasn't that great either, but there were some aspects of it that aren't too bad. But I think George Clooney still might be the worst one. And he said it himself also that he was. But Val Kilmer's Batman is actually pretty decent and is in there. Just wish he would have shown a little bit more personality. And I would have liked to see him in a better movie with a better cast. Nicole Kidman was fine. I said Chris O'Donnell would have been fine as Nightwing. Maybe recast the villains. I think Tommy Lee Jones was okay as Two-Face, but again, I think he did a little too much also. And Jim Carrey's Riddler was just too much, and just the neon and the nipples and all that stuff that Schumacher put in there just was way too much for me. The motorcycle gang that Chris O'Donnell takes on was stupid also. And then they brought him back for the fourth one. I was like, what the hell, man, really? But Val Kilmer does have one of the best scenes where he's in his office at Wayne Manor, and the bat signal goes up, and he's sitting at his desk and he holds on to it, and the chair flips back and then slides him down a tube, and he goes through this tube to get to the Bat Cave and gets into his Batman uniform. That's kind of cool. And Nicole Kidman was extraordinarily hot in this movie and extraordinarily sexual in the movie, and her and Val did pretty decent together. And so Val Kilmer was not a bad Batman. It was just the movie that surrounded him. I think I would have liked to see him in a different one. Definitely not Batman Robin. That was just way over the top. I maybe, and Nolan's a little bit too more grounded. I would have liked to see sort of that even ground between a Tim Burton and a Nolan Batman movie in between, and would have liked to see maybe Val, as I said, show character a little bit more than just the broodiness of him. And he's decent, though, as I said. He's not the problem with Batman Forever. He's not a bad Batman. He's not the problem with Batman Forever, so that's why it's number 14 on my list. Number 13, I think, needs to be moved up because I didn't realize how much people actually liked this movie. And I only saw it once when it first came out, so I thought it would look interesting. And it's a remake of a British TV show. Number 13 is The Saint, directed by Philip Noyce, who did Patriot Games and The Clear and Present Danger. It was the movie he did after those. Val Kilmer seems to be having a little bit more fun in that movie because he dresses up in different costumes, stuff like that. It's like Mission Impossible before Mission Impossible came out. And that's another one that would have been fun to see a sequel kind of to. But I need to probably rewatch it again because there's a reason why I put it number 13. And I don't remember if the storyline was awful or whatever, but I think it's a decent movie, and just all the overflowing love for Val that's been on social media lately they keep bringing up the Saint. So it's one of these things that maybe I need to dig through. I know I have a copy of it somewhere. I need to dig through my stuff and rewatch it again, particularly in his honor, maybe during my big summer blowout binge, which reminds me, I better tell you this right now. My wife and my son and my daughter are all going to be gone the week of 4th of July. So I am taking that week off, and I'm going to try as much as I can to watch as many goddamn movies as I can, because I've really gotten lax in my movie watching, and there's a lot of movies that I haven't seen that I really want to see, and there's a lot of movies that I think I need to rewatch now 20, 30 years after they were released, which is crazy to me that The Saint was released close to 30 years ago. It's unfathomable to me that the mid 90s was 30 years ago. And I know this is really fathomable to me because my 30th college graduation is coming up. I graduated from college 30 years ago this year, 30 years ago. So it's hard to believe because it seems like only yesterday this movie came out, but it's 30 years old. But The Saint was actually pretty good done, pretty well done. I don't remember why I put it so low. Maybe it didn't register with me. And as I said, I've only seen it once. And I think I enjoyed it. I think there's a couple aspects to it. And I know the character he plays. And Elizabeth Shue as his love interest was okay. But it just, I think I need to rewatch it. But that's where it is. And as I said, everybody on social media is saying how great and underrated The Saint is. So I think I know I have it. I need to dig it up and see if I can find it there. So The Saint's number 13. Sorry, I don't have more about it. It's just that I said it's been a while since I've seen it. Number 12 is Red Planet. I like Red Planet a lot. I think it's another underrated movie. And it's the second one of, Hollywood has this thing that they do where they have two movies come out the same year that have similar story ideas. Dante's Peak and Volcano that kind of started this whole thing off. Then there was Deep Impact and Armageddon. And then there was Mission to Mars and Red Planet. And what seems to be a major factor in these types of things where they have the two movies that come at the same time. One always seems to be kind of more of a scientific, realistic sort of thing. Deep Impact, Dante's Peak, and Mission to Mars all have sort of a more realistic aspect to it than the second one that comes out. And usually the scientific one is the first one to come out. In that case, those three I just told you were the first ones to come out. Volcano came out about a month or two after Dante's Peak. I love Dante's Peak. Volcano is Tommy Lee Jones, and it's an action film with a volcano that erupts in Los Angeles, and they got to make sure that Los Angeles doesn't get destroyed by lava, so they have to, and the lava doesn't kill a lot of people, so it's a big action film, race against the clock sort of thing to keep the magma from spreading to families and neighborhoods and to drag it into the ocean. Armageddon is one of the worst movies, in my opinion, ever made. But again, more action-oriented. Deep Impact about the comet that's getting ready to hit the Earth and how the Earth is trying to, they know it's going to happen. They can't stop it. So they have to prepare for something that happens. So there's a lot more going on with it than that. Armageddon is just like we send up people to go up there and we make it go boom. And it was a straight-up action film. And that's what happens with this one, too. Mission to Mars was more of a, we're going to go to Mars. We're going to look at where Cydonia is. We're going to take a look at the face on Mars and all that. And they discover, Martian civilization and blah, blah, blah. Red Planet with Val Kilmer in it. The premise behind it is that that NASA and the Earth has seeded Mars to try to create oxygen and change it so that it could be livable. And they're coming to check it out when they go to land. There's something wrong with their escape pod, and it crashes, and they can't, and they're sort of stuck on Mars with Carrie-Anne Moss, who was fresh off the Matrix, I think, up there in the ship that's orbiting Mars, trying to keep in contact with them. So you have Val Kilmer, Tom Sizemore, forget the other actors who are in it, who all crash on the planet and realize that there might not be any way for them to escape. And then eventually they have a robot dog sort of thing that is a scout for them that also was affected by the crash and is essentially stalking them and killing them. But then they also discover that on the surface of Mars that there are these that the seeding they did has been taking place and oxygen has formed on Mars, so they can take off their helmets and walk around on Mars now. And then there's these like weird worm-like creatures that kill them. So it's a more wild, action-oriented, not really science-based sort of thing. The science aspect of the seeding of the planet is like more of an afterthought. It just is a way for them to be able to take their helmets off and walk around on the Martian surface without having to be on their helmets the whole time, and be more of like an action film as they're being stalked by this like robotic dog sort of thing. It sounds awful. It actually isn't. It's a really entertaining film, very action oriented, and it is a very intriguing way how Val Kilmer discovers a way off the planet. How he does it, it's actually it has shades of The Martian. It came out before The Martian did, but Val Kilmer again is steady presence in this, is the main character in it. Sizemore and the other characters, even Carrie-Anne Moss, are more just there for supporting. This is Val Kilmer's movie, and he did a decent job of it. So number 12 is Red Planet. Number 11 is a hugely underrated animated film that I think also should be higher up on the list now I think about it. As another one of those that I probably need to rewatch again, considering that Easter's just around the corner, on here 18 days from now. It's DreamWorks' first animated film, Prince of Egypt, and Val Kilmer is the main voice. He voices Moses, and that's what the story of Prince of Egypt is about Moses and the 10 Commandments and the plagues and the parting of the Red Sea and the burning bush and stuff like that. DreamWorks, for those who don't know, was Steven Spielberg, Katzenberg, and I can't think of the musician. But they were trying to create their own new multimedia thing. Spielberg wanted to create his own movie company, distribution center. Katzenberg wanted to get away from Disney and compete for the animated dollars. So at that point, Disney was dominating with their slate of Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Mulan, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Princess and the Frog, stuff like that. They were dominating Pocahontas. They were dominating in the Lion King. I think I said that. Were dominating in the animated feature thing. And Katzenberg, who had worked with Disney, wanted to get his own Geffen, that's what the other one is, wanted to get his own animated movies out there to compete with Disney, because I guess he was kind of pissed with Disney. And then David Geffen, who was trying to set up a music company through DreamWorks as well to get, popular artists and stuff like that. So they're trying to do this whole big multimedia sort of thing. Didn't quite work out the same thing, but Katzenberg went all out with Prince of Egypt. It is a gorgeous, stunningly gorgeous animated film, fantastic music, and Val Kilmer, again, does his own singing. He's a singer. He's trained, I guess, because he does a lot of singing in a lot of his movies, and he's very good at it. And it's a wonderful film, and again, is one that I really need to rewatch again, because it's another one that people say is underrated, is absolutely stunningly gorgeous. And as I said, it seems like Katzenberg really wanted to make a splash, so he threw all of his money in on making this huge, and then it did decent numbers. And then after that, they started focusing more on the computer generated with the Shrek movies and stuff like that. So they end up still doing pretty decent when it comes to the animated films. And Spielberg, he still does some DreamWorks stuff, but DreamWorks now is just sort of a co-helper. So Spielberg hasn't just done films directly through DreamWorks. It was a shame that it sort of fell apart because it's a really neat idea. But again, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Val Kilmer and his standalone stuff. And Prince of Egypt is stunningly gorgeous, great music, and Val Kilmer, again, as always, kills it when it comes to singing. He's fantastic at that. Number 10 is Willow, Ron Howard's version of Lord of the Rings, with Steven Spielberg and I think George Lucas producing it. Basically, I think Lucas wanted to make a movie version of Lord of the Rings, but they were unable to get the rights to it. So they had a writer write a similar story, and end up, making Willow as sort of a stand-in for Lord of the Rings. They changed it up a lot differently than expect. Instead of the ring, it's a baby who's going to bring about the downfall of the bad guy. But it's a pretty decent fantasy film, and Val Kilmer in this one is not the lead. The lead is Warwick Davis, and he plays Willow. He's a little person, Hobbit-esque, if you will, who is tasked with delivering this baby to somebody. I forget what it was. Again, Will's another one I've only seen maybe once. And along the way, he has help from Val Kilmer, and at the time, his wife, Joanne Wally Kilmer, was in it also. And they are not the leads in it, but they are a big enough support that they are considered like co-leads in it. And again, Kilmer doing fantasy, action, stunts, seems to be having a decently fun time. 80s film, kind of a much loved sort of film, which is surprising that it doesn't seem to be as loved nowadays. They did a Willow TV show on Disney Plus that didn't do very well, and Disney Plus has already moved it off of the network so that you can't even watch it now if you wanted to. But it was Warwick Davis's movie, but Val Kilmer was in there for the support, playing the Aragorn sort of character, who is not really the Lord of the Rings is an ensemble film for the most part. You could conceivably say that Willow is as well. It's under the firm hand of Ron Howard, who did a wonderful job directing it, and the good producing powers from Lucas and Spielberg. So, pretty decent cast. And as I said, it's their version of Lord of the Rings, changed up enough that, that it's not a ripoff, but there are aspects you're like the Leo meme. I gotcha. So Willow, number 10, again, just fun Val Kilmer is always better than somber Val Kilmer. And he seemed to be having a pretty decent time in Willow, and he was with his wife. I don't know if they were married at that time, but they were together, and so it must have been a fun time for them. Number 9 is another movie I should probably move up closer. Actually, I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to change that up. Yes, I am. So I am changing. Give me a second. That works for me. All right, so I'm going to switch it up now. So now that I switched it up, number 9 is no longer the movie I thought it was going to be, because I thought it needs to be moved up, and it does need to be moved up, and it was. So number 9 is now, and this one was moved back. Nothing against it, because it's a great fucking movie. The Ghost in the Darkness. Stephen Hopkins, who directed Predator 2, directed this movie based on a true story about early 1900. 1908, something like that. A lion, 2 lions have been going around and have been murdering African people in one of the African countries there, and they're on a rampage, just killing people after people. Nobody really knows why these lions are attacking people, but they need help, so they call in 2 hunters One played by Michael Douglas, who is sort of the old school, lived amongst the people, knows his way around the thing, and Val Kilmer's more no newbie sort of modern for the time sort of gunman, and the two of them team up as they try to stalk these two lions. The fact that it's based on a true story is really freaky, and it's such a great movie. It goes a little slow at times, but the building of the suspense is great, and Kilmer and Douglas are fantastic. You can't go wrong when you have those two actors in any movie together. They both play off each other very well, and it is a very well shot, very decent, exciting, on your seat, edge of your seat, sort of anticipatory sort of film that I'm definitely going to be rewatching during my rewatch this summer. And I think I'm going to add Prince of Egypt and potentially The Saint to that as well. Maybe Batman Forever also. I might do a whole Val Kilmer thing, depending on how much time I have. As I said, I have a ton of movies I want to watch, but there is going to be a day that I'm going to put aside that I'm going to rewatch some old stuff. So we'll check that out. But definitely Ghost of Darkness is a really good film based on a true story. So if you want to see a little bit a different side of history that you might not learn about or have never heard of before, this is a decent movie to check out. Very well done. Very under the radar sort of movie. Not a lot of hype to it. You could conceivably call it underrated as well because it is that good. So number 9 is The Ghost of the Darkness. Number 8 is, I guess, kind of maybe the last real film that Val Kilmer did. He did a bunch, or that was well respected. He did a bunch in the 2000s, but that was when his sickness was starting to really get to him, and he was just sort of persona non grata because of the issues he had in the mid to late 90s, where he was considered a hard to work with actor. But this film sort of brought him back into it, and also kind of set the stage for one Robert Downey Jr. also as Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And it is a action comedy from the guy, I can't think of his name right now, the guy who wrote Lethal Weapon. Not Liz, Kiss. Shane Black, yep. Shane Black, who wrote Lethal Weapon, was in Predator as well. And did end up writing Iron Man 3 and directing it too. He directed this movie, wrote and directed this movie also. And it's Downey's movie for the most part, and this was 2005. So this was Downey's last film before he got Iron Man and what sent him back to stardom. But this sort of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang sort of hit in Downey's career where he was finally, it looked like he was finally clean and his career was starting to get back on track, but he still was not trustworthy enough. So he had to get a few things under his belt, and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang showed up because Shane Black always liked him as well. Shane Black's been around since the 80s as well. And he needed to have somebody who could offer good support, who also maybe needed to kind of have a little bit of a baptism, a rebirth, as it were. So, and he knew it was a good actor as well. And that's where you get Val Kilmer coming in, playing a gay detective who Robert Downey Jr.'s actor's character is shadowing for a role he's getting ready to play, and then ends up getting involved in this case. And it's a typical cliched sort of story, but Shane Black makes enough changes, makes enough different things to happen, and just the chemistry between Val Kilmer and Robert Downey Jr. is outstanding. The mentor over the fresh guy, sort of Men in Black, sort of rat-a-tat-tat sort of thing, is very prevalent in this. But from Val Kilmer and Robert Downey Jr., two actors who had such potential and had it sort of their potential sort of taken away from them in that period. So this movie was sort of a way to get them both on track. Val Kilmer, because of his being, according to a lot of people, a terrible presence on movies, and Robert Downey Jr. with his drug problems. Shane Black knew what he was doing, teaming these two up together. And what you get out of it is it's not desperation because it doesn't look desperate, but it was like both Kilmer and Downey knew that they needed to show the world that they can still do something, that they were still good at it, and they happened to see this. Shane Black was the best person to get them into this. And to be fair, not much happened to Kilmer after this. He got a few more jobs after this, but he didn't really get anything major. But that was also when he started getting sick. But Downey, of course, we know what happens with that. But this movie, you could, if Kilmer wouldn't have gotten sick, I think you would have seen him maybe not have the renaissance that Robert Downey Jr. had, but I think you would have probably seen him in a few more good things like that. But things just went a little backward for Val Kilmer, which is a shame because he's really good in this movie, as is Downey. And as I said, they play off each other really, really well. And just a great movie from Shane Black. And, Shane Black's that sort of writer that you need to have actors the caliber of a Val Kilmer or a Robert Downey Jr. able to rat-tat-tat those the way he writes and taps the stuff out there. They're the best people to do that, and they really are. And I think, again, if Kilmer wouldn't have gotten sick and Downey wouldn't have gotten so wrapped up with the MCU, another Shane, he did Iron Man 3, but another Shane Black movie that wasn't an MCU with those two probably would have come out. Not a sequel to Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, but sort of I could actually see them doing another film together because they did have really good chemistry together, and it was a good thing. So Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is another hugely underrated film. And that's another one that everybody talks about when they're doing their praising of Val Kilmer that a lot of people don't know about. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is well worth it. Number 7 is another. It's great. A lot of these movies that Val's in are so underrated. And that's another reason why he's a well-loved actor when it comes to the movies he's in. And this is a film that probably nobody really knows about. And I just really found out about it. I think it was on cable. And I watched it. And my mom, she was intrigued by it also because it has Native American settings and stuff like that. So it became one of her favorite movies. It's Thunderheart. And Thunderheart's a great freaking movie. It's Kilmer plays an FBI agent who has like a quarter Native American in him or something like that. And Scott Glenn, who is his boss, needs him to investigate a murder on a reservation ground. It's a federal, I forget the reason why it's a federal crime, because usually reservation crimes are taken care of by the reservation police. In this case, Graham Greene, one of the most prominent Native American actors, is in this movie as well, playing the police officer on the reservation. And the two of them team up. Of course, the whole thing, they're not big fans of each other because Kilmer doesn't want to have his Native American part come out. And he knows that's the only reason why he was asked to do this job. And he wants to get away from his Native American part of his life or his upbringing or of his makeup. And the Native Americans know him, that he's also Native American as well, slight Native American, and they think he's the white Native American and that he doesn't, belong there either because it's there. He does not grasp, hold up, doesn't hug, and doesn't get himself into the Native American culture. And they're kind of, they call him like the white Indian sort of thing. But the two of them end up, begrudgingly joining forces and discovering a massive conspiracy as they're digging into this murder. And at the same time, Val Kilmer, being within the Native American culture again, and with the Native American aspect of his makeup, his DNA, is starting to come to the forefront as he starts having visions and stuff like that. Stuff that, he was trying to avoid because he wants to get away from his Native American aspects. But being in such proximity of the Native Americans and the reservation and the holy men and stuff like that has had him to start having these visions. and eventually it leads to a bigger conspiracy involving the U.S. government, again, screwing the Native Americans. And this time Val Kilmer wants to, help the Native Americans. It has one of the greatest shots. There's certain aspects, certain shots in films that I always love to come back to, and it's in the trailer. So if you want to see what it looks like, just go to the trailer for Thunderheart and check it out. Graham Greene and Val Kilmer are being, spoiler alert, are being chased by the FBI after they're going to uncover this conspiracy, and they're going to try to silence them. So they end up taking them to across the desert, trying to lose them, but they come to like a butte that they can't get around. There's no place for them to escape, and they start getting surrounded by the feds. And so they know that things are going to go south for them. But then all of a sudden, all these Native Americans start appearing on the top of the butte and around them with rifles drawn at the federal government, at the FBI agents. And there's just this fantastic spin shot of Val and Graham Greene looking up on this butte as you see all the people, the Native Americans up on the butte and then down to the FBI agents and stuff like that. It's a gorgeous shot. It's a gorgeous movie, a very underrated, very dark windish sort of thing. If you like those types of novels and you like that TV show, it's a really, really good movie and a very interesting story and just a very understated performance by Val Kilmer, doing what he always does best, being just the strong, silent sort of type, but having, being strong, silent type, but you can see so much going on inside him. And everything doesn't end happily in the movie, which makes it a little bit more realistic also. It's a fantastic film, and hugely recommended. And that's why I moved it up number 7, because it is such a good movie. And it's hard to say because all these movies have great performances by Val in them in varying degrees. And they might, Thunderheart's one of my favorite Val Kilmer movies, but being number 7, there are 6 other movies up there that his performances are a little bit better, but they might be in movies that might not necessarily be my favorite, but they're still very much worth it. But number 6 is one of my favorite movies also. And one of my favorite Val Kilmer performances. It's a comedic performance by Val Kilmer, and it is his first real sort of job for Hollywood. And the directors, there were 3 of them, were coming off one of the hottest movies in the early 80s and is considered to be one of the funniest movies of all time. The directors of Airplane, David Zucker, Jerry Zucker, and Jim Abrams, their follow-up to Airplane was number 6, Top Secret, with Val Kilmer. Top Secret is a parody movie of Elvis Presley movies and World War II movies. Again, you get Val Kilmer singing. He plays a pop star in the vein of an Elvis Presley, who has been called to perform at a German unification concert. This is back when East Germany and West Germany were still a thing. And the joke is that East Germany, or one of the Germanys, was still under like Nazi sort of rule. So that's where the concert's going to be at. So they I think so they make it as if the Nazis are still in control of West Germany, I guess it would be. But it's a parody of World War II movies and Elvis Presley movies, and it is not as funny as Airplane, but it has its moments. It parodies the Blue Lagoon. It has great other great actors in it, like Peter Cushing's in it, and Michael Gough, who he worked with in Batman Forever also. Yep, there's the kitty. Hi, and there's my big boy and my kitty boy. All right, you can take them upstairs. But it has just a lot of funny set pieces. The underwater bar fight is one of the funniest comedy sequences you're ever going to see, and is one that you got to sit there and think, how the hell did they direct that? The shootout at the farmhouse is one of the funniest ones also. But again, just a fantastic parody of Elvis Presley movies and World War II movies, done perfectly. Val Kilmer having the time of his life in this role, absolutely enjoying what he's doing. As I said, probably one of the first movies he ever did. And Zaz, keeps things running. It's a bit more sexual humor than Airplane was, but don't let that distract you. Airplane is still the better movie, but Top Secret has definitely wonderful, hilarious, laugh out loud sequences. The Swedish bookshop where they are talking Swedish, but basically they said their lines backwards and then forwards. They run it back around, sort of like how the man from another place in Twin Peaks talks. So that sort of weird, slow sort of thing. And the sequence is shot in reverse. It is one of the funniest things. Then there's the giant pigeon statue where guys fly in and piss on it because birds are always pooping on them. So they're peeing on birds. It's some funny stuff. There's some really brilliant set pieces, some really hilarious sequences. Airplane is still funnier, but Top Secret has its moments, and you just have to see it just for the underwater bar scene alone. It's something you've never seen before and will never see again, and it absolutely belongs there. It's absolutely hilarious. Top Secret is number 6. I made no secret that number 5 is not one of my favorite movies. I think it's highly overrated, and I probably get booed out of any cinephile place or even pop culture place by saying this. I'm not a fan of Top Gun, and Top Gun's number 5 on my list. I don't know what about it is it. Do I think it's a bit too snarky? Do I think Tom Cruise is just a little too full of himself in this, that it doesn't quite work for me? But what does work for me? Val Kilmer's Iceman, one of the best villains, even though he's not really a villain, but he is the antagonist kind of to the main character of Tom Cruise's Maverick, and is the only one who could probably stand toe-to-toe with Tom Cruise as Val Kilmer's Iceman. And it's like the best line is, "You're dangerous." Sort of the bite thing is hilarious. Don't know where that came from. Yes, Val Kilmer is involved in the greased up volleyball match. It is a 1980s pop action film about the military. Great Harold Faltermeyer score and a good soundtrack. And there's just something about it. I don't like Tom Cruise's egotistical asshole who he thinks he can do no wrong, and he really doesn't do any wrong. Even the death of Goose, his partner, really is not his fault, and doesn't really get much drama out of it. But Val Kilmer absolutely steals the movie as absolutely the best antagonist for Tom Cruise's character, and is the only one who can, as I said before, stand toe-to-toe with him in this movie. And the callback in the sequel Maverick, which I already talked about, Tom Cruise had such respect for Val Kilmer that he said, "I know Val is sick and I know he doesn't want to act anymore, but I really need him in this movie. I really want him in this movie." And he went to Val directly and said, "I need you more than anything in this movie." And Val, being Val, said, "All right, I'll be there, man." And they did the great scene in Maverick, which just continues their antagonistic relationship. They're a bit more respectful of each other now that they're older. but there's still that aspect sort of at the very end where they sort of still have that antagonistic thing. And it's just a great line from Tom Cruise saying, "Do you really want to do this right now?" And just Val with a big smile on his face is just it's outstanding. But this is where it starts. Iceman is one of his best roles, is not his best role, but is one of his best roles. And as I said, even though he's not the star of the movie, he is a fantastic antagonist, and gets earned is his begrudging respect for Tom Cruise's Maverick is not just thrown in there. It's through the path of the movie, it makes sense for him to become sort of that way towards him. And then, as I said, played off spectacularly in Top Gun Maverick. So even though I'm not the biggest fan of it, Val Kilmer's Iceman in Top Gun puts it at number 5. Not because of the movie, but because this is a Val Kilmer list, and his role in Top Gun is outstanding. Number 4 is, it's kind of hard, not kind of hard, it's kind of interesting to see how good of an actor Val Kilmer is when he's considered one of the best actors in this movie, when the other 2 actors in the movie are Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. The movie's Heat. It's number 4. Val plays the 3rd lead role in the movie as a member of Robert De Niro's crime crew. Is one of his best roles. And during the massive gunfight at the end of the movie, the way that Val Kilmer reloads his gun is getting praise from military and other people who use that military grade weaponry that Val does, and praises him for how he realistically is using that gun, when most movies, they don't give a shit. It's lots of guns. The guns go pew pew and all this stuff. This was a realistic portrayal of that gun, and they said only Val Kilmer could have made it look realistic, considering all the other stuff that goes on around him in the movie with De Niro and Pacino in there, going to go eye to eye and wall to wall. The scene between De Niro and Pacino is still the best scene in the movie. But Val Kilmer is not a character you're going to want to ignore in this movie. And in fact, it's a shame that Mike, I forget that Mike something or other who directed it, waited so long to write the sequel, Heat 2. And he wrote it as a novel first, and then he just adapted it into a screenplay he's going to direct here in a little bit. And it's a shame that he didn't get it done quicker, because it focuses on Val Kilmer's character, who is one of the only ones to escape the big bloodbath at the end. Spoiler alert for those who haven't seen Heat. And the sequel basically focuses on him. And it would have been nice to see a actual film sequel with Val Kilmer reprising his role from Heat, but Mike, it's gonna kill me. It's gonna like jump out at me when I see it. It's like, why didn't I think of that sooner? Michael Mann, right? So Val Kilmer's phenomenal. I think Heat's another one I'm going to watch during my summer watching party again. It's been a while since I've seen it, and the scene between De Niro and Pacino is so good. But as I said earlier, when critics of the movie, fans of the movie, say that Val Kilmer absolutely steals the movie and is someone to keep your eye on and to watch when he's surrounded by 2 of the all-time great actors, De Niro and Pacino, and to show that he can go toe-to-toe with them and be on their level, just shows you how good Val Kilmer was, and is a absolute utter shame that he has never won an Oscar and never will, unfortunately, now. But Heat is number 4. A great performance all around by him, filled in a movie filled with great performances, as I said, by 2 of the Hall of Fame greatest actors of all time living. Val Kilmer sits in there and is able to deliver and go toe to toe with them. And you're like, holy shit, this is outstanding. Number 3, again, is another one that proves Val Kilmer's, when he sets his sight on a role, he will work his ass off to make sure that it is done with the proper amount of respect. In this case, he is taking on the role of one of the most famous musicians of our time in a biopic directed by one of the most, what's the proper word? More interesting directors of our time. Number 3 is Oliver Stone's The Doors. And this is one, did he get nominated? I think he got nominated but didn't win for Best Actor. He's the lead singer in The Doors. Again, my mind isn't working right now, and I gotta find. I forget. It's the lead singer of The Doors. Jim Morrison. That's right. So he played Jim Morrison. Once he heard that they were doing a movie with The Doors and Oliver Stone was going to do it, Val Kilmer knew he wanted this job. He trained his voice to sound like Jim Morrison. He got the look to look like Jim Morrison. And he went into audition looking like Jim Morrison, singing like Jim Morrison, and it blew Oliver Stone away. He knew he didn't have to look that far for his Jim Morrison. And when he was on set and was doing what he was doing, making the film, the remaining living members of The Doors, I think, have cameo roles in the movie as well. They saw him and they heard him singing, and they're like, they could not tell if it was Val or Jim because he looked like Val. He looked like Jim Morrison, sounded like Jim Morrison, and the remaining members of The Doors gave him the biggest compliment, saying, "You are Jim Morrison." And Oliver Stone's The Doors movie is one of Oliver Stone's better movies. Has a great cast, including Kyle MacLachlan, who was one of my favorites from Twin Peaks, and who has done a Instagram thing where he remembers Val. He's like, "You're always going to be my Jim," sort of thing. And it's a great sequence. It's a great fucking movie. Jim Morrison, see, I've even got it confused. Val Kilmer is Jim Morrison. He is Jim Morrison possessed. That's not Val Kilmer on screen. That is Jim Morrison channeling himself through Val Kilmer, who worked his ass off to make sure that he respected Jim Morrison, The Doors, Jim Morrison's family, the fans, and also did a good job for Oliver Stone. And everyone has nothing but how great Val Kilmer was as Jim Morrison. Everybody who's seen the movie, everybody who was in the movie, every fan of The Doors, even the old members of The Doors said Val Kilmer is Jim Morrison. There is nobody else who could have done this role as good as Val Kilmer did it. It's probably his best performance, and probably deserved an Oscar for it. But I like 2 of his other performances better, and one of them is probably his most iconic performance. But Jim Morrison's Val Kilmer's performance as Jim Morrison is probably, if I was being held at gunpoint, they said, "What do you?" I think it's probably his best performance. It's the one where he's actually, well, the other one is, we'll get to that in a second. When he takes over the body of a real person, he channels the spirit of that person. And that's Val Kilmer, and that's what makes him a great actor. Doors is a great fucking movie, and it's number 3. And again, what makes it a great fucking movie is Val Kilmer as Jim Morrison. Number 2 is probably my favorite Val Kilmer performance of all time. Yes, it's only number 2, but it's also maybe his second role he's ever done. It's it's my wife's one of my wife's favorite movies of all time, and it's one of those movies I can watch over and over again. It's a comfort film. It's real genius. It's a mid 1980s movie. It is so funny. It's so 80s. Val Kilmer is absolutely having the time of his life in this role. As I said, the back to back of Top Secret and Real Genius shows the real genius of Val Kilmer and his knack for comedy. And Real Genius is one of the best movies, in my opinion, ever. It's one of the funniest movies ever. And it's such a great role for Val Kilmer. It gives him a chance to just totally unload in comedy, but at the same time, you utterly believe everything about his character. He plays Chris, I forget the last name, his character's last name, but he plays Chris, and Chris is one of the smartest people in the world, and he's still only like 20 years old, 21 years old, and he's at college for smart, like one of the smartest colleges out there for smart people. He's getting ready to graduate, and he is working on a laser. That's how smart he is. Mid 80s, so laser technology was still fairly newish, and he was one of the only few people who really understood the laser, and he was doing the project for his professor, Hathaway, played by God, I can't remember these actors' names. Peck from Ghostbusters, Atherton, William Atherton, and the thing is, though, he was, as I said, one of the smartest people of all time, and for 3 years, he did nothing but work. And then he had an epiphany, a realization that there is more to life than just work. So his senior year, he absolutely just opened himself up, pushed the work, still did the work, but he was so smart that it comes real easy for him, but gave him a chance to become a slacker, joker, womanizer, having lots of sex, flirting with lots of women, doing lots of, joking and just sort of goofing off and that kind of stuff. He is tasked with mentoring the newest, smartest kid in the world, who is a young 14-year-old who's going to college early, who is being involved in this laser project as well, named Mitch. And Chris sees Mitch as how he was, uptight, thinks nothing of work, has no life outside of that. So he tries to nip it in the bud and tries to break the spell of work on him and get him to embrace life earlier than he himself did, so that he doesn't go through what he himself did. And it doesn't quite work, but eventually you can see him chiseling away at it. It's a great relationship between the two guys. The cast is fantastic. You have the guy Kent, the guy you love to hate, who is the antagonist of the group. You have William Atherton's Dr. Hathaway, who is such a sleazy asshole, but he's a little bit different than Peck and then the role he did in Die Hard also. And it's a similar role, but you can actually see that he actually delves a little bit more into the character in Real Genius, more so than he does in Peck or the character in Die Hard. This character for William Atherton is probably the most, personal for him. And you can see that, when he has to punish Chris, you can tell that it's killing him, even though he's pissed off at Chris right now. He's yelling at him, whatever, threatening to make sure that he doesn't, graduate and kick him out of school and stuff like that. You tell just the camera holds on him after Chris leaves, and William Atherton is absolutely in shock of what he just said and what he just did to someone that he always considered, maybe not necessarily a son, but someone that he had huge respect for. And he's just under a lot of stress, but you can just tell after he has that sequence where you think, oh, he's being just a dick to him. It's not something that he really wanted to do, but it's sort of adding to the pressure that has him in there. So Atherton still, and he still gets his comeuppance and gets what he deserves because he is a dick, but there's more to him than just being a straight up dick and antagonist. And then you just get the rest of the cast in there. It's a smart people comedy. Everybody in the cast is hugely intelligent, Big Bang Theory-esque sort of characters. Kind of awkward when it comes to relationships, stuff like that. You've got a lot. You have your main core of 4 or 5 actors, and then you have this exterior of about 6 or 7 more that periodically weave in and out of the storyline, but have their own distinct characters and do add stuff to the plot. And then you have Laszlo Holyfeld, which is one of the more interesting characters ever created and one of the most bizarre characters ever created, who's weaving his way in and out of there too. Filled with everybody wants to rule the world, popcorn, dogs, disguises, stupid cars, just Val Kilmer absolutely having the time of his life in this movie, just absolutely ruling the screen, being the funniest guy in the movie. And at the same time, you can see the inner workings of his character. You can see everything that he went through his first 3 years as being just this brainy sort of guy who got picked on and stuff like that. And then after the epiphany, how he's become sort of this slacker sort of guy who still has this huge amount of intelligence. And then that really comes to play because he's acts like nothing but like just this sort of slacker sort of guy. You see some of his brains a little bit, but not much. But when you get to the finale, when he realizes the problem with the laser and he figures it out and he solves it, and he's the only one that could have done it. It's shows you that this character, Chris, has so much depth to him, and Val Kilmer is able to plumb that. On the surface, he's the comedy slacker type, but you can tell deep down he's still highly intelligent. Intelligence comes easy for him, and there's a sequence where he really unloads all the baggage that he's been carrying onto Mitch. When Mitch is having issues, is saying, I was exactly like you, and I'm trying to help you not be like I was because it's not a good thing. And it's a film you have to watch. It's a quick hour, 40 minutes, if that. It's funny, maybe not really slightly unrealistic, but at the time, it is a smart people movie. And it is, and I think it was a good example. I think it was overshadowed by Weird Science because you had John Hughes writing and directing Weird Science. You had the sort of Brat Pack sort of thing going on there. And it is a loopy, goofy, absolutely insane comedy. Real Genius is better. Real Genius is better than Weird Science. Weird Science is still a good movie. Real Genius is the better movie and deserved better ranking in the best movies of the 1980s. It is up there, but you're not going to break the John Hughes triumvirate. I don't really count Pretty in Pink as that because he didn't direct that. But Pretty in Pink is still up there as well. But just John Hughes in general owns basically the 1980s list, and Real Genius belongs high up on that list, but it's being suppressed by the greatness that was John Hughes. Don't get me wrong, his stuff was good and his stuff was iconic. Real Genius is a better movie than most of John Hughes's stuff in the 1980s. Except for Breakfast Club. Breakfast Club is just an entirely different film from Real Genius. 16 Candles is a great romantic comedy, John Hughes version. Weird Science is just an absolute insane crack comedy. And Ferris Bueller's Day Off is an annoying. I'm not the biggest fan of Ferris Bueller myself, but it has its moments. Real Genius belongs in the discussion for some of the best movies of the 1980s. and it doesn't get it. Don't take my word for it. If you take anything from this list, go see Real Genius. Get it out. I'm sure you can find it somewhere. It might not be on streaming, but you can probably buy a DVD copy of it. They just released it on 4K about a year or so ago. I have it on 4K. I am so excited. I am so happy that I have it. I haven't watched it on 4K yet because I haven't watched it in a little bit. But Real Genius belongs in the list of at least the top 10 best 1980s movies. It just doesn't get the respect it deserves, and it should. And as I said, if you take one thing from all this, go see Real Genius. Get it. As I said, you can probably find a DVD copy for like $5 on Amazon. If you want to upgrade it to a Blu-ray or 4K, you might have to pay a little bit more. But I guarantee you, you watch it, you will be glad that you have a copy of it because you will come back to it again and again and again because it is just that good. And Val Kilmer, that's Val Kilmer's movie. It is his movie. It's the one right before the number one. In the number one, he's not really the lead in the number one movie of Val Kilmer's career, the performances. This is the best lead performance by Val Kilmer in a movie, in my opinion. And if you look back at the list, the only other one that might be a challenge, and I talked about it already, The Doors is the only other one that probably would have a tie between The Doors and Real Genius as being his best lead performance of his career. Number one is not a lead performance. You can already guess what it is. You look at the name of my episode. It is his most iconic character. It is the best version of the character. And again, he was stuck in the, two version of the film. They did another version of it that came out after it. Number one is, of course, Tombstone. Val plays Doc Holliday. It is the most iconic role in Val Kilmer's career, even more iconic than Jim Morrison. It is his Doc Holliday is the best version of the character. No other Doc Holliday will ever touch Val Kilmer's. Every other Doc Holliday performance from here on out, from when it came out in the 90s to now, is always going to be compared to what Val Kilmer's is. Val Kilmer's is the most iconic, is the ideal, is the best version of Doc Holliday, who was a real person. And anyone else who tries to make a movie about Doc Holliday, you're never going to be able to surpass what Val Kilmer did with that. He was nominated for the Oscar, should have won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. And that's the thing. As I said before, he's not the lead in this. Kurt Russell is. But it's a fantastic cast. It's a fantastic movie, and it went up against Kevin Costner's Wyatt Earp, and I think Dennis Quaid played Doc Hollywood in that one, or Doc Holliday. Wyatt Earp. I think. Yeah, Dennis Quaid was Doc Holliday. He was okay. He's not Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer, and it was really hard for Dennis Quaid because his Wyatt Earp came out after Tombstone did, and Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday was already iconic months after it came out. It is the most iconic role in his career. It is the one he is the most remembered for. It is the one that is probably his best performance. You can make a case for Jim Morrison, but if you ever talk about Val Kilmer, the first thing out of all their voices is he was a fantastic Doc Holliday. And he was. His Doc Holliday is iconic. Your Huckleberry, the way he does it, it's hell, you could even make the case that Johnny Depp took some of Val's work from Doc Holliday and added it to Captain Jack Sparrow. If you look at the way they sort of act and talk and stuff like that, and it is, I don't know, it is his best role. That's why it's number one. It is the best role. It's the one he will be remembered for. Again, it's a shame because his Jim Morrison is just as good, but his Doc Holliday is still the one everybody talks about. Is still the one that you will see when you go into your social media, when everybody's talking about Val Kilmer. You're always going to see Tombstone actor, maybe Top Gun in there as well, and Jim Morrison. They're going to be like the three main ones you're going to see. The three that, people posting all of his sort of different things he did in Tombstone as Doc Holliday. He is the best Doc Holliday, will always be the best Doc Holliday. I do not foresee anyone ever surpassing Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday, and it will be the role that he'll be remembered for probably forever. And well worth another check out if you haven't seen it. If you've never seen it, you need to check that out. If you have seen it, it might be a good time, a good day to go back and rewatch it. Val Kilmer is Doc Holliday. It's his best performance. It's number one on my list, Tombstone. So thank you for hanging out for me this early thing. I went to the dentist. That's why I was able to do one here now. I wanted to get this out because it is a list I had done and I was going to do eventually, but this seemed like the appropriate day to do it. So thank you for watching. I will post this soon enough, and I hope you enjoy it. Check out these movies. There's not really a bad one on here. And Val Kilmer, everything he did was very good. Now, I didn't have his other stuff. He did know, like most other actors, he did do some, mediocre films, but he will be remembered for these 14 and the 2 honorable mentions I took there. Those are his most famous ones. And I'm sure everyone has seen at least 1 or 2 of those movies on this list. Val Kilmer, rest in peace. You are fantastic. If you want to learn more about Val Kilmer, he has a memoir he wrote years ago. I was going to buy it, but it's been on my Amazon list for a while. I might have to buy it now to get into that and talk about that. I talks about his relationship with Cher, which is always interesting as well, and his relationship with Tom Cruise, also the mutual respect version of it, and probably talks about his most iconic character, Doc Holliday, as well. Thank you for watching. I will be talking a little bit more about Val Kilmer again on my Dylan Knows show on Saturday, episode 601. I will be talking about Val Kilmer again. Probably not as much as I did here, obviously, because I did an hour and 18-minute long video about the top Val Kilmer things. But we'll talk a little bit about him on my Dylan Knows show because there's a lot of other stuff that came out and happened this week. But Val Kilmer passing away is sad, and is up there with David Lynch passing away this year as well. Thank you.